This is a video posted by Sec Hummer. It is an excerpt from a debate at the community church between an atheist and a creationist. Enjoy.
Hi. I have a question for Bart. If you don't believe in evolution, what is your alternative?
Well, God.
Jesus?
Yes.
What's your alternative?
I can't think of one. I know that evolution is definitely out because there's no evidence. There's no evidence for it.
He claims there is no evidence of evolution. If you have never read Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution, or Jerry Coyne's Why Evolution is True, or never even opened a biology textbook, a chemistry textbook, taken a class on geology or paleontology, archaeology, then sure, there is no evidence of evolution. Let's ignore all the layers of rock, the order in which we find fossils, radiometric dating, DNA sequencing, geochronology, and biogeography, and then we have no evidence for evolution.
And by our observations, it's impossible.
How the fuck did he come up with that?
There are no human observations of anything increasing in complexity through random forces. Our observations actually show the opposite. If things are left to random, they actually increase in chaos.
He claims there have been no observations of things increasing in complexity by random forces and then loosely mentions entropy in the worst possible way. Firstly, they're not random forces. It's a very specific driving force called natural selection, and it happens all the time. And entropy only applies in a closed system. The Earth, or any region of the Earth, is not a closed system. The sun has been beaming the planet with energy for literally the past 4.6 billion years straight. The Earth is not a closed system. Read a book.
So my conclusion is based on observations and empirical evidence.
Really? Your conclusion is based on observations and empirical evidence, you say? So there is evidence of a magical sky wizard who made a rib woman that was later convinced by a talking snake to eat from a magic tree. I think I missed the scientific papers published in scientific journals that would prove this scientifically.
We know that it takes a hand or some kind of designer to make things that are complex.
So here he's talking about the watchmaker analogy. Imagine yourself on a beach, and you're walking down, and you look down and you see this watch, and you look at the watch and you say, wow, this is so complex. And because of its complexity, you are able to recognize that it is designed. That argument fails for many reasons. First of all, we know a watch is designed not because of its complexity, but because we have seen people making watches. And we also have no naturally occurring method by which a watch would be created. Another thing wrong with the analogy is that if everything is designed, you are walking down a beach full of watches next to an ocean full of watches and a sky full of watches above you. And then you go and you pick up this one watch and say, oh, this one must be designed. We recognize that something is designed comparatively. So if everything is designed, how can you claim that something is designed? Do you have nothing to compare it to? Everything is designed in your world. And he says that complexity requires a designer. If complexity requires a designer, and your God is infinitely more complex than us, who or what designed him? If you say that God doesn't require a designer because it's God, go back and open a philosophy textbook, because that's special pleading, yo.
Now, Marco said that my scientific criteria are too strict. The scientific criteria were proposed to me by an evolutionist who collaborated with me on a book, who introduced me to Karl Popper's requirements for science, testability, empirical evidence.
He is also forgetting the most important part of Karl Popper's requirements for science: falsifiability. It's hard to prove a hypothesis is true, but it's easy to disprove it. For example, A simple thing to disprove evolution would be to find a fossil of a Great Dane in the Precambrian. If verified, that one simple thing would disprove evolution. But to give an example of how we know evolution is true, I'll give two examples. Studying evolution can take decades, but occasionally change happens incredibly rapidly. The blue moon butterfly, for example, of the Samoan Islands was being attacked by a parasite which destroyed male embryos. This led to a gender imbalance whereby males made up only 1% of the butterfly population. However, within 10 generations, about a year, males had returned to 40% of the population. This is not because the parasite has disappeared. It is still present, but it is no longer deadly to male embryos. This case shows how a mutation giving an advantage can rapidly spread through a population. Any male with the ability to survive infection would be able to mate with a great many females due to the lack of other males and spread his immunity through the gene pool. Lastly, you may have heard of this little guy, Tiktaalik. Back in the day, scientists were looking for a link between four-legged animals, tetrapods, and fish. We predicted that such a transitional form would lie somewhere in the Devonian period. In 2004, we found it, a fishapod. Exactly where the theory of evolution by natural selection would predict it would be. The powerful part about science and the theories that come out of it are predictive capability. The reason we know evolution and general relativity and Newtonian physics and the germ theory of disease are true has a lot to do with predictive capability. Science has that. Creationism has no predictive capability, no testability, and no empirical evidence. Evolution is a demonstrable fact. Get over it.
Well then, how do you think humans came to be then?
How do you think what?
How do you think humans came to be then?
Came to be. God just poof, he made him.
So you take proof God made them rather than some scientific proof?